There have just been a parliamentary election in Denmark, so I decided to make a video where I will explain all the political parties and where they fit on the system. So first I will just explain them on the far right, far left axis. My mouse will disappear from time to time, I'll just need to shake it around to get it back. So basically this is how they are in the parliament. As you see, red is left leaning in Denmark, and then blue is right leaning, and then this is red and blue, it's pretty much center, and this is also pink and blue, also center. And then you have green, can mean conservative, old school parties, and then green can also mean that you are pro green energy overall. So yeah, and this is how they are placed according to each other, and I wouldn't really know where the center is and where the far right and far left is. But Enhedslisten would be the far left party in Denmark, and then Nye Borgerlige would be the far right party. So that's kind of how it is, but maybe Enhedslisten would be considered left-wing by some, and then Nye Borgerlige would be just considered right-wing by some. So I just place them by how I think they're placed. But now I need to replace them, right? Because in this right and left axis, we only get one axis, and it's kind of weird because we have the economy, so there can be some economical ideology, but then also you have traditional values, or rather authoritarian values of how you rule a country, and then progressive or social freedom, in that you want to give people some freedom. And it's really not progressive, because progressive is very much socialists, and how they want a progressive society where everyone is exactly equal. So not the equality of opportunity, but equality of outcome. That's something else. And of course, on the right, you have many parties that are pro a liberal market that will create a lot of wealth, because there's a lot of free trade and a lot of people getting rich and making sure that everyone around them is also getting rich, while the left would want to take over a free market and then restrict it so they can tax it a bit more, so they can divide out the profits. And here in traditional, or rather authoritarianship, you have some values that are very, very indoctrinated into the ideology of the party, and they will want these values to be followed by everyone in the population, and they want people to forcefully follow their ideology. While here with social freedom, you just want people to do what they please to do. And this is how I place them. What you see as the Nazi party is up all the way up here, because they are very much authoritarian. But this is actually where it's kind of clear that they are not right wing, because right wing here, right on this axis, is the economic axis. I just put the Nazis here because I know they're not pro economic liberty. They actually are founded on a lot of socialist principles, where you need to share what you have, and you need to be good to your fellow man, and you need to follow these traditions that they have set up, and you need to have a market that's controlled from top down, and where everything is divided equally among the people. But they're also nationalistic, so it's among the people themselves in the country and not people all around the world. As communists, they will tell you that they are pro-socialism everywhere, and everyone needs to be a socialist. And here, this is the communist ideology. They want a lot of restrictions on the market, very extremely heavy restrictions, more than the Nazis. But also in their ideology, they want a libertarian society where at least you socially are free to do as you please. Well, at least if you share as much wealth as you can. So they will take as much wealth as they can from you, and you will work for the people and the state, but you will be free to do a lot of the stuff you want to do. That's at least the ideology. But often this happens. So often when you give people more economic freedom or social freedom, then it will kind of follow along. So if you give them more economic liberty, they will start to trade, start to communicate, start to interact with each other and have more social freedom. And if you give them more social freedom, it's of course very often follows with some economic liberty, because you need economic liberty to express yourself, to to have some goods that can mean that you can express yourself, like a car, so you can drive around the country or stuff like that, and be able to travel outside of the country. And this is, of course, what happens often with communism or extreme ideologies. If they very much restrict freedom of speech or freedom of expression or the economy, then very often they end up here. Actually, in all examples, I know parties have ended up here if they are very extreme in how much they want to restrict. So often there will be some populist party that's populist and only want to restrict one thing, but often when they gain power, they kind of restrict too many things. So that's how I see the world, and that's like my bias that I wanted to explain, so you can understand why I put the parties the way I do here. Here I just put the Democratic Party here and the Republicans here. They're pretty authoritarian compared to the two big Danish parties. The two big Danish parties, as you can see, Venstre are pretty much centrist in their economic policy, but very much pro heavy taxing, and at least compared to USA. And then Social Democrats, that's their name. They want even heavier taxing, and they also want a lot of social policies. They work very closely with the unions, and they are very much pro-union and pro-state and pro-government workers and stuff like that. So maybe Democrats do look a bit like Socialdemokraterne, and Republicans do look a bit like Venstre, but it's very misleading. Venstre is not even as much right as at least not the all Democrats are, because they're very much pro the big taxes in Denmark and stuff like that. But right now, with Democrats and both Republicans, I do see a lot of authoritarian ideas that are very much not shared with that many parties in the Danish political scene. It will be very much seen as two extreme parties in the Danish political scene, because most parties, here are all the parties, and if you put them in to the system here in this square, then you will see most parties are actually in the middle. But of course here I spread them out to illustrate where they stand. But yeah, they're pretty much all kind of lean back parties and very mellow and want to keep the system going as it is. But some of their proposals and ideas might be a bit far out there, but it's not usual that you can get some of your extreme proposals created into a law, because there are so many parties you need to cooperate with and you need to agree with other parties on what you do. And usually these big parties, Socialdemokraterne and Venstre, who gain the power, they are more traditionalist and they are more centrist. So yeah, they will often get the most power, and they will try to create a centrist policy. And for me, it's pretty nice, because there's no one rocking the boat too much, and the economy is pretty stable, because the companies in Denmark are getting a lot of support from the state, and they are getting a lot of, not too many rules to regulate them, so they can trade freely. And it's very much a liberal market. It's very much a capitalistic society in Denmark, very much so. Even on some areas, much more than USA. So in that aspect, this is how Denmark got a lot of money, by creating a market that can develop, but also having a state that supports the market instead of fighting against it some of the years. And so let's start from the left, and I will explain why I put the parties where I put them, so you can understand how I think about the political scene, or rather how I think the political scene looks like from the neutral point of view. But of course I'm not neutral, so yeah. It's not really how I see the political scene, but how I think other people would see the political scene. Let's start from the end here. These are the red parties. These three parties, these four parties, these five parties actually, they are the left-leaning parties. They work together always. They vote for each other and stuff like that. This is the big party. And then they get the helping parties who get them into the government. So they will often get the statsminister, the prime minister, will often be from Socialdemokraterne or Venstre, because they are the big parties. But they still need to negotiate with these parties to get into the government. And they do have some a bit weird ideas for these guys. So sometimes you need to sell out a bit to get the governmentship. And with the blue parties, you have these Liberal Alliance, Venstre, Dansk Folkeparti, Konservativ. Let's start with the red. First you have Enhedslisten, Ø. And Enhedslisten is pretty much the far left in Denmark right now in the government or in the parliament, because the communists are not really getting elected into the parliament anymore, and it's pretty much because they are divided across some of these parties. So Enhedslisten are the old communists, but they are very much mellow because right now they're in the parliament and they know what to do and what not to do to get elected, and also know what to say and what not to say to not become too extremist in their communistic ideology foundation. But they do have some ideology that's not fully communistic. But still, most communists will vote for them, and most communists would agree that this is party for them. Enhedslisten, they also actually have some communistic principle, or rather socialistic principle that they do follow, and that's pretty nice. For example, I think you give away a third of your wage, parliament wage, to the party. So again, you see some of these socialistic principles of everyone needs to be equal, even though a lot of their members are pretty rich actually. But they also have rules about how many years you can stay in the parliament, and I cannot remember how many it is, but after some years you need to take a break or join another party, and then you can come back after some years again. So you cannot just sit in the parliament or run the party for a long time. They always change out politicians. So there's often a new face for the party, and often not leaders. They don't really have a leader as such, but there's often a leader type figure, and then these leader type figures could, for example, when they're not allowed to run for the party anymore because of the rules, they can run for some of the other left-leaning parties, or they can go into private business or something like that, or they can just take a break and then run for the party again after 3 years, or when the next election is coming up again. And Alternative, I just put them there. They're a bit weird. They're called Alternative because they are alternative. So pretty much they're saying that we want a green policy, we want a green Denmark. We also want to focus on some of these values that are not focused on BNP or GDP, it's called in English. So we're not only focused on the economy and growing the economy. They are saying that, well, Denmark is already pretty rich, and right now we need to focus on other stuff. So they actually sat down and created a forum and created some discussions internally in the party of how to create a better system for the world. So basically they are kind of writing their own manifesto of how the world should look like, and they're very enjoying themselves in creating this new world and this new ideology. And there are a lot of academics in the party who kind of want to create this new system, but they are pretty much on the left and pretty much support the left-leaning parties, at least as I see it. But I'm not an expert on their politics because they're pretty new. And Enhedslisten also says that we are a capitalistic society in Denmark. So the left in Denmark calls Denmark a capitalistic society, and Venstre, the big right-leaning party, also calls Denmark a capitalistic society, and pretty much all parties say that Denmark is a capitalistic country. So calling Denmark socialist would actually be something that pretty much no Dane agrees with, as I see it, because we know Denmark is not socialist, and even the left-leaning parties will say no, it's not socialist, it's something else, and we want actual socialism. And Socialistisk Folkeparti, they are very much left and would be considered not far left, but like right before far left. So I don't know what to say about them. They're pretty much populistic left party, but it's easier to vote for them for some of the centrist voters because they're not very far out there, but they still support workers and they're still very much on the left. And as you can see, there's a lot of room on the Danish political scene for left-leaning parties. And Socialdemokraterne are a huge party. They often get a lot of left-leaning votes, pro-unions, pro-workers, heavy taxes so they can share the wealth, but not as heavy taxes as these two parties, of course. But pro more taxes. Always some tax increases are proposed so they can create a bigger society, bigger state sector. And where am I now? I think maybe I'm at Venstre, because Venstre is the big right-leaning party in Denmark. They call it Venstre, it means left, because they sat in the left in the parliament. And Conservative used to be called Højre, means right, because they sat in the right of the parliament. So yeah, it's a bit misleading, but they are actually on the right. So for Danes, it's pretty confusing. Yeah, they're just a big centrist, right-leaning party, kind of mostly right-leaning on the economy. They basically want to support business and make sure that the business in Denmark is thriving, and also they very much support farmers too. But overall, they're pretty much centrist, and they're not conservative or anything like that. They're a bit pro-business, but still very much supporting the Danish system with very heavy taxation. And Dansk Folkeparti, pretty much a single-issue party. It's anti-immigration, and then the woman who created them worked looked after old people, so they all very much support old people. And with a lot of old people, you have more anti-immigration thinking. So yeah, that's their base. But they will also get a lot of votes from just people who didn't want more immigration and kind of only had this party to vote for because they were the only anti-immigration party for some time. Right now, they're kind of this single issue party. They don't really have an economic policy. That's why I put them in the middle here economically, because they want more taxes to help out the older people, but they don't want to help out immigrants, and they don't want to take in more immigrants. So it's not that they want a certain economic policy, they just want the money to go to the places they want it to go to. But they still cooperate with the right-leaning scene, and maybe because they're a bit more anti-immigration, but also maybe because the Radikale here, the other pretty much centrist party, Radikale Venstre, also called Venstre, they are very much pro-immigration, very much so. Actually, some of their proposals have been pretty much unlimited immigration. It's not all politicians who say that, but yeah, sometimes you have these statements from them about how you should have more immigrants, and there's a lot, the lofts should be very, very high. So they are academics, they mingle among immigrants, and they think intellectually about the world, how you can create this perfect, great world where everyone trades and everyone can create some wealth for themselves. So they're pretty much for a free market, and for also libertarian principles of immigration. So a lot of people can come to the country. And yeah, they work with the left. They do have some of these idealistical principles, but for someone who wants to have a liberal economic policy in Denmark, it's good that they're on the left, because they kind of push the left a bit to the right economically, more liberal market. But on the other side, Socialdemokraterne just right now, they got a anti-immigration policy to get some votes from Dansk Folkeparti, the anti-immigration party. So right now they're getting a lot of these votes back from people that kind of feel that immigration is a problem in Denmark. And of course, this is not good for Radikale Venstre, who dislike these kind of principles of anti-immigration. But Socialdemokraterne kind of understand that if they want to remain the big party in Denmark, they have to get some solutions on the table for big problems. And right now, the immigration issue in Denmark has not been solved by any party. And at least for the immigrants in Denmark, no one has found a solution for what to do with them or how to get them immigrated into the larger Danish society. So they kind of have some ideas, but nothing has worked. And let's say Conservative, they're a bit here, they're not really authoritarian as such. They do support the monarchy and the state church. Denmark has a state church, and yeah, they support traditional values. They also work alongside Venstre. They did have some states minister, premier minister positions, and Radikale did too a long time ago. but often it's Venstre and Socialdemokraterne who gets the rulership of Denmark and then work together with other parties. But conservatives are pretty much it's a traditional vote. It's the safe vote, so maybe it's a bit boring in that way because they are conservative, but they are very much meager and not extreme conservative at all. They're just conservatives because they want the country to remain a great country, and they also want to honor history and tradition, so they're very much like museums and old culture and stuff like that. Very much a safe vote that anyone could, I don't know, most centrist voters would vote for them, no problem, I think. And we have Liberal Alliance, because Denmark just got a libertarian party, so they are new and not just some years ago, but they're still new, so they need to learn how to be in the parliament. In the last election, instead of getting some of the economic policy on the table, they kind of told Venstre that, well, just give us some powerful position in the ministries, so we get some minister positions and we get a lot of money from the Danish state, and we also get big pensions, and we get a lot of power this way. We get a lot of exposure for our top, but yeah, you don't need to apply that many of our ideological principles. So I think right now the voters have punished them in the last election because a lot of voters feel that they kind of went for the power and went for the top-down rulership instead of applying some of the economic principles to how they would run the country. So they are very much a top-down run party, and they would actually probably be up here or something like that in how much they are top-down ruled. Very much ruled from the top, and the top decides what they say, what they do. But still, it is the party you would vote for if you want a liberal economic policy in Denmark and want lower taxes. Because all the other parties are pretty much, they do sometimes propose a bit lower taxes, but not that much. And Liberal Alliance wants the tax level to become kind of normal compared to the world as a whole. Because right now the Danish taxes are very, very high. And Nye Borgerlige just about got into the parliament. How many? I think they got you need 2% of the votes to get into the parliament. So if you get under 2% of the votes, then you probably won't get into the parliament. Of course, you can get into the parliament anyhow because single people running in some area of Denmark can get into the parliament that way. But yeah, they just got about over 2% of the votes, so they got a lot of people into the parliament, but just about made it, and they are very, very small because they are strict anti-immigration. So right now Denmark got a new anti-immigration party alongside Dansk Folkeparti, and then Socialdemokraterne, of course, also anti-immigration now, but we don't know how much. They're saying they are, but we don't know if they are or not. But we know Nye Borgerlige are anti-immigration, and it's very much the party anti-immigration people will vote for. And they are also Borgerlige. It means they are liberal, and it means that they want a liberal economic policy. So with Dansk Folkeparti voters would be a lot of people on pension and a lot of people who have some money, but they are not super rich. So kind of the People's Party, just the regular blue-collar worker. Where here you have white-collar workers who now have the party that also is anti-immigration. So you don't fear this party being too left-leaning in their economic policy. And Venstre, the big guy at Venstre, the last statsminister, he said that he wouldn't work with this party because it's too extremist, so there's no way he will work with them. And I think that maybe some years will need to pass, and they will need to kind of work with this new system and show that they're not extremists, so that Venstre will want to create a government with them. Because right now the left-leaning parties have a lot of the seats in the parliament, they have most of the seats, but even if they didn't have most of the seats, then Venstre, if they didn't want to work with Nye Borgerlige, they would have problems creating a government, because they wouldn't find enough people to vote for them too. And this is actually how I would want to show it, because I think this is much better, because it kind of shows that this is economic liberty and this is personal or social liberty, and this shows how these two parties are very much pro liberty in all aspects. And then of course you have authoritarian parties here, and then less economic liberty parties here. Yeah, so I think this is much more, this tells me much more about how the system actually is, but I didn't want to turn it this way while I talked about it, because that would be confusing. But yeah, for people who like liberty, they will pretty much liberty in all aspects of life, they will probably vote for these four parties who are down close to this area. And I just wanted to show you how the election went. It's 2019, so you can see how the election went. This is the new right party, that's anti-Islam, far right. Yeah, I made this chart. This Danish People Party, it's the anti-immigration party. As you see, they had a lot of votes, and now Socialdemokraterne and Social Democrats, they said that they would be anti-immigration. So now they really took a big step at these votes, and a lot of these people who kind of were left-leaning economic policy but anti-immigration, then they can now vote for this party. So they went from the right to the left. But also this party got some few votes, and some votes were wasted for some of the other anti-immigration parties that didn't get into the parliament. And then you have this conservative party here. It's pretty small now, as you can see, because, well, they used to have a lot of power, but now conservative movements are not populistic, so it's harder for them to attract young voters and people who really rile up and vote for them because they're really passionate about them. They are just conservative. This is actually the party I talked about with the Libertarian Party economic policy. Here they got a lot of votes, really a lot of votes. They had a lot to say, and Denmark got a right-leaning government, and they got very happy. And their top leaders, they kind of said, well, now we want states positions, so we want a lot of influence in the ministries, but our economic policy can wait. And this is how the voters responded. No thanks, please give us what we ask for. Yeah, Venstre, just a traditional old party, right-leaning. And also, of course, you have some, this is from Færø, it's a colony of Denmark. They actually get two seats, so it's pretty nice for a very small area and very few people. They get 2 seats in the parliament, so that's a lot. They actually have a lot of power, but it's fair because they are a colony, so they need to have some say, and they have a lot of say in Danish politics. With this candidate, of course, joined Venstre, so it's pretty much just a Venstre vote. But it didn't come from Denmark itself, main Denmark. And as you can see, these 3 people from what did I say? There, from Greenland, Færø, and Greenland. These are the 2 colonies, and they got actually 3 seats, from 2 from Greenland and 1 from Færø. So it's pretty much nice for Socialdemokraterne. And Alternative, new populistic party. We don't really know what they stand for, so we don't know who they are, but a lot of people do want green policy in Denmark, so it's kind of the Green Party that are not fully socialistic. Socialistisk Folkeparti, also the populistic party, they got really big here, but now it's kind of, I mean, they have to get a populistic figure, and they have to really explain what they stand for, because right now they're kind of a party between Social Democrats and Red Green Alliance. So they are not far left, they're not just left, but they are kind of between, and that's just what they are. And this is the replacement for, we had a communist party in Denmark who had a lot of power, and left socialists and stuff like that. But this is just a replacement for them. It's more a meager socialist system. They do want socialism, but they don't want a revolution as such. Some of the voters do, but not the main party itself. This is historically when it started, and this is where the old parliament got shut down. The old parliament is like in most countries, it's more conservative, so it's harder to get some of these progressive ideas through law. So if you had some progressive idea, if Socialdemokraterne had a lot of left-leaning power, if they had some idea for how they want to run the country, it would be harder to get the ideas across where you have the old parliament that has just as much power as they do. And of course it was abolished now, so now you can work a bit more effectively. So there was a lot infighting between these two parliaments that were pretty much equal in strength. I think the old parliament was smaller. So, and I think when you were elected to it, I think maybe you were elected for life, or at least a long time, and you need to be some kind of elected by members or something like that. So it's more conservative overall. And this is, of course, the new system is extremely populistic. So it's very much going out into the media and talking to the people directly. This 2019 election, as you can see here, Socialdemokraterne, the red is left-leaning. As you can see where they got a lot of votes, and you can also see Aarhus and Copenhagen. And of course, big concentrated centers usually have a lot of left-leaning voters, as you can see from other countries. And that's of course also true in Denmark. Often because young people, they study in these big cities because they do want to live in big cities where there's a lot of stuff going on, and they don't need a big house for the kids, so they can just live in small apartments there. And also they can study in the big universities, and they go out and often vote very much left-leaning. As you can see in his list, the far left party, they got a lot of votes in Copenhagen. And as you can see in North Copenhagen and North Aarhus, you have these just on top here on the right, you can see there's a blue area. It's because a lot of rich people live there. So I don't know if rich people want lower taxes or something like that. I don't think that's the case, maybe. But yeah, they do want more liberal policy, and they think a liberal policy will help Denmark or maybe help themselves. So this is the last election, and where the new election. I think this is the new election. Yeah, this is the new election. So yeah, you can see here how the parties are divided, how many votes they got, and you can also you can see at for example, the Faroe Islands, Færøerne, not that many people voted, right? It's very, very few votes for 2 seats. It's like 13,000 votes you need to have to get one single seat in the parliament. And that's not many, because as you can see how many votes voted in the main Denmark and how many seats were given out. So they do have a lot of power. They also have a lot of power in other areas. And in Greenland, it's like 20,000 people voted. It's under 50% of people voted, and it got 2 seats in the parliament. Again, very much, these 2 colonies, I think they are pretty happy with being a colonies of Denmark, because they can always make their own country. But right now they know that they're getting so much money from Denmark. I think maybe a third of their economy is just subsidy from main Denmark. They know if they leave Denmark, it will only be a bad thing. I mean, they do want self-governorship, and they do want to have control and decide everything about what they do. And of course, they have powerful people who want to get more powerful among the country overall. But yeah, they cannot become independent because they need the money. And this is just a charter made from Gallagher index numbers. Gallagher index numbers is just, for example, if you get 20% of the votes, if you don't get 20% of the seats in the parliament, then it's unequal. So you get a big number, and if all the votes go to the right parties, to the parties the people voted for, then you will get it into this green area. So if I search for Denmark here, just search again. You will see where they are. So pretty much the Danish election is very fair. I didn't plot the new one because he didn't Gallagher didn't put his numbers online yet. But yeah, it's pretty clear that the Danish election is very, very fair. So if a party gets 50% of the votes, they will get about 50% of the seats in the parliament, not 60% of the seats, not 40% of the seats. And actually you have some countries where the election is pretty unfair, like Australia, New Zealand, USA, Canada, England, or rather UK overall. They have some very unfair elections sometimes where a party gets very few votes and get a lot of power in the parliament, or get a lot of votes but get nearly no power at all in the parliament because they have some broken political systems. So this is why I feel that in Denmark my votes do count, and also the party gets some a bigger budget from the state. So when you vote for a party, they will get 33 kroner per year. So if I vote for them, they will get these 33 kroner every year until the next election. It's actually a lot of money when you count out the votes. And with this money, they can use the money to get out into the media and then market their party even more, and then maybe next time they will win an election. But even if they don't win the election, it's pretty much economically a good idea for them to run again, and just because they get their point across. So if they have some anti-abortion point, it's very much an unpopular opinion, but you can have that point, or you have some anti-immigration point. You often will not be elected because you're on the far out on the spectrum, but you will get your point across, and you will get more money, so you can then get your point across even more. Or even so, you can just take the money and like give yourself wages or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That much short introduction to Danish politics. And if I look at other countries, I'll make it much shorter because I don't know much about their political scenes. But for Denmark, I needed to make a very long video because I had a lot of things to say. Thanks for watching.